Yes, yes, Kanye was on Alex Jones, I know. That's not what I'm talking about today. I want to go back and talk about FTX since I didn't give much of a chance. I think I might have only done one video on FTX in the past, and it was actually like a week after the scandal first broke. And that's just, I mean, I'm so ashamed of myself that I've done more talking about Kanye West and the Kanye circus, which I do think is important from a cultural standpoint. I do think that this is having a big impact on regular people, but the FTX thing is objectively much more important. Sam Bankman-Fried is now running the interview circuit, much like Kanye West is, going on all these shows. Of course, he's looking for a favorable interview. He's going to the likes of the New York Times and ABC News, specifically George Stephanopoulos, who is noteworthy for being a former Clinton administration official. So he's going to the Clintons to try and do his PR. Honestly, I'm a little surprised at how much protection SBF seems to be receiving. It makes me think that maybe a lot of the libs actually did buy into his cult. Which is surprising because I looked at him. I mean, if you look at the thumbnail for the video, the one video where I discussed him, I said my first impression is that this guy's a frontman. He's a nobody. He is a figurehead. That's it. And some work that actually, I think Whitney Webb did a podcast on FTX. I might link to that. She and other people who are more plugged into this space, they have. I won't say it's 100% certain, but my suspicions about SBF being a frontman and about there being a broader network behind him, it looked obvious from the surface, and the consensus amongst people who are of this same mindset regarding SBF have linked him back to a group called Effective Altruism, which is essentially a liberal, phony philanthropy cult, and their premise, their philosophy, is that there is an objectively correct allocation of scarce resources, which can be deduced through reason and administered by, a dictatorship of philanthropy. Now, this contrasts quite radically with other theories of a moral distribution of scarce resources and allocation of scarce resources, namely my own, and of course I didn't come up with it myself. It dates back at least to Ludwig von Mises. The philosophy, I guess if you want to call it that, is essentially that the moral allocation of scarce resources is the one which is achieved through a voluntary exchange of any number of consenting parties. Effective altruism, on the other hand, essentially believes in from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, and what each person needs is something that can be objectively determined by some great omniscient altruistic force. And if that sounds a little fishy to you, you probably have figured out that objective altruistic force are the elites who run this movement. The effective altruists are the ones who will decide where all of the world's resources, how they should be divvied up and distributed. And so it is essentially an ideology which believes in giving a totalitarian, I guess that's a little redundant, total totalitarian, well, let's just say totalitarian power, concentrating that in the hands of a few elites. And so where does SBF come into all this? Well, apparently SBF was handpicked by the leader of this elitist cult, which, I mean, it's hard for me to even take their philosophy, if you want to call it that, seriously, because it's just such a naked power grab. They think that they should have power over the rest of us. It's that simple, and that that's not up for a vote. It's objective. They will determine what you should have. If you barely have enough bread to sustain yourself through the day, if that's all they think that you should have, then that's what you're going to have, and you're going to like it. That's what SBF believes. That's what his benefactor believes, and supposedly this is what FTX was established to try and promote. But considering that FTX has now blown up and is no more, it is no longer of any use to the elites, other than maybe using it as a negative example to try and argue against the legality of truly free cryptocurrencies. I just can't figure out why, at this point, the media is still defending SBF and why he isn't, locked away in prison or, been assassinated yet or suicided, I guess is the more appropriate term. To me, he's clearly outlived his usefulness to them. So why are they keeping him around? Why are they humoring him? Why are they letting him go on this self-pity tour where he says, oh shucks, I was in over my head and I didn't know what I was doing. And it just didn't work out well in the end. I just don't see what the purpose of all this is at this point. Are they really going to try and rehabilitate him? Are they going to pretend that what happened with FTX was no big deal? That, countless innocent depositors lost, billions and billions of dollars collectively? I don't quite understand why they're not treating him like Bernie Madoff. Because I'm sure Bernie Madoff, prior to his whole scheme blowing up, he was, probably in good standing with the rest of the elites, but they were very happy to throw him under the bus, as soon as he was exposed as being, a bad guy in a very public way. They all bandwagoned and, dogpiled on him. And yes, SBF clearly was not, the big man in charge of this operation. It was very clear to me that his benefactors, the ones who set him up in his first job, and whoever helped finance the founding of FTX, because it doesn't seem to me that SBF could have self-financed the creation of this massive crypto exchange. And even then, he could not have grown it from 2018 to now into the behemoth that it was just a few weeks ago. FTX, I think, is very clearly an invention of the effective altruist network. But now that it's broken, what's he doing here? At the very least, if they were going to be nice and protect SBF, for being a good patsy, they would just put him out to pasture. They'd give him a ticket to Dubai, send him there, and, he'd be protected, of course, at the behest of the U.S. government, but secret, or, in the public eye, they would say, oh, well, gee, we wish we could prosecute SBF, but, he's beyond our clutches in the UAE, and they won't let us touch him. I mean, that's, to me, should be the best case scenario for SBF, yet he's wandering around the United States unencumbered, going on, having his own traveling pity party. To me, there's enough people around him. He's enough of a puppet. Obviously, he would not be going around on this pre-planned media tour if he had any fear of prosecution. Yes, I think that the erratic tweeting and the DMing of the Vox journalist, that you can write off as just, SBF being a loose cannon. His handlers, I don't think, were behind that. That very well could have just been his own stupidity. But at this point, this is deliberate. This is well thought out. There's no way that he would be allowed, as a puppet, to go on this tour of the media, trying to rebuild his image, if there was any expectation that he was going to be prosecuted criminally. And so if that's the case, if they're not going to prosecute him, then, if they're not going to make him out to be the bad guy to cover up all of the money laundering that was likely occurring through FTX, then, again, he should have to go away. Because the more attention you bring to him, the more people, are going to, the victims are going to be angry, and that it's just going to create more buzz. You want this story to disappear if they're not going to use it, if they're not going to make him into a scapegoat. So since I haven't figured this out, I think that means clearly there's a lot more going on here than we know. I don't know what we don't know. That's probably the best way of saying it. Because I've been trying to speculate, okay, well, we don't know everything that went on, but let me try and figure out what might have gone on. Let me look at other people, who do the same thing and have a good record of piecing these things together. Let me look at them, see what they're saying. Are they coming up with a picture that explains this? And not quite, not entirely. A lot of the pieces are there, but I think there's a lot of pieces missing. So with that said, I'm going to try and keep an eye on this, and yes, I'm very entertained by Kanye. I might talk about him on days when I'm bored, but for the most part, if there's something serious like this that deserves attention and thought, I'm not going to be on the fun stuff. I'd like to talk about Indiana Jones 5, too, and that disaster. But alas, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.